Social distancing broke your heart, especially when you were stuck in your room at home with nothing to do. It was a struggle for students and employees alike to endure this pandemic, stress burdening you heavily. Not knowing the state of the people around you was something that clutched your heart deeply. Even if history was making the textbooks, you were wary of all of this, not being able to see your friends and family. You heard the doorbell ring to your apartment and caught a flash of To be fair, Bakugou's version of ringing the doorbell involved switching between knocking your door and ringing the doorbell again and again. It was a kind of thing that always disturbed your neighbors, creating complaints surrounding him, but you've gotten used to waving away concerns about it. You always knew it was him at the door whenever he did that, and you rose from your seat on the sofa, excited to know that he was here. Swinging the door open, you noticed a large amount of bags in his hand, indicating that he had gone to the supermarket. Midoriya told me that your mother had to fight you from coming here, you commented, a teasing lilt to your voice. He snorted at the mention of his childhood friend. What changed?
I snuck out,
Bakugou answered shamelessly with a smirk lining his lips, making you roll your eyes at his response. After taking off his shoes, he met your gaze steadily as he set down the bags.
I wanted to make sure that you were okay. Is it a crime for me to think about you?
His voice cracked slightly, revealing his worry for you, as he shed his outer shell, just for you. A smile spread across your face, since you knew that he didn't like making a big deal out of his emotions, even if it was you. Tipping yourself onto your toes, your lips met Bakugou's, a sweet kiss meant to convey the feeling of missing him so much. Your fingers slid through his hair, tugging the strands slightly to draw a murmur of pleasure from his lips. Much to his surprise, you ended the kiss early, flicking your head to the group of bags next to the two of you. What do you have there?
I could have shown you later,
he grumbled petulantly. You settled down at the coffee table in your living room, curious about what he had brought you. Sifting through the bags, it was clear that he cared for you by choosing different produce and meat, along with some canned food. There was even a recipe book? You asked, giving him an amused look. I could always use the internet to search stuff up.
The internet has nothing on recipe books,
Bakugou warned you, snatching the thick book out of your hands.
People are panicking, so they're going to stock up on bad food. I'm not gonna let you live like that.
Okay, you sung, but internally you were grateful for his help, knowing that you had the worst luck when it came to being stuck in quarantine. Katsuki, thank you so much. What is this? Was all he simply said, not having an intelligent response to your question when you lifted up a whole package of several rolls of toilet paper.
You did mention that you were running out of toilet paper. So, I made a run to the convenience store to get a couple of packages. I didn't buy out the store like the other idiots out there.
You couldn't control your laughter at the sheepish way the tips of his ears turned a rosy red, but internally, you were just glad that he was here with you during this time. despite his rough tone. His words were just so him that it made your heart ache for all the time you had lost to this quarantine when you could have spent it with friends and family. So you were thankful that you had some memories of a blissful time during this period. Tamaki peeked from the door, his eyes glittering with shyness. Warmth radiated from him, and you were suddenly hit with the feeling of home when you saw him. He held 2 boxes of takeout in his arms, something that you have been longing for during this whole quarantine period. You would never think that you would miss those white styrofoam takeout containers that he carried.
Tama-chan?
You breathed out, his name sounding like a blessing against your lips.
What are you doing here?
I got a permit to go out for my work study,
he explained with a slight smile lining his mouth.
So I made a detour for you.
Your heart immediately swelled because of Amajiki's kind heart and considerate nature. He had thought about you during these lonely times. You followed him to the dining room where he set down the styrofoam takeout containers onto the table, not needing any guidance after knowing the insides of your apartment far too well. The slight snap of the box to open it revealed a part of the world outside your apartment that you've been longing for all along. Takoyaki hit your senses immediately with its mouth-watering aroma, and it enticed you with the way that the sauce dripped down the savory dish. Mayo and takoyaki sauce dripped down with shredded seaweed clinging onto the takoyaki balls.
I've missed this so much,
you murmured, the words falling out of your mouth ever so thickly. You lifted your head up to meet his eyes.
I missed you.
Before the two of you started eating, he kissed you so softly and tenderly that it brought tears to your face that he could be here with you.
I missed you too.
You're not supposed to be here!
You hissed as soon as you opened the door to the smug look on Shinsou's face.
Don't you remember the reminder about social distancing?
You were about to close the door on him for both of your sakes, despite the reminder not to panic over the whole situation of being quarantined. You couldn't help yourself but panic while seeing so many people suffer. Despite the sweet sentiment of seeing Shinsou, it was not an ideal meet-up for him to risk his life. Knowing you far too well, he pried the door further with his fingers curled around the door, effectively using his strength to prevent you from being able to close it.
Kitten, do you really think I'm the type to listen to those rules?
He asked with a laissez-faire air to him.
No,
you admitted without thinking once about saying it aloud, much to his amusement.
But it's better for the two of us.
Don't overreact over this. I got the go for me to get out of home to see you.
He hummed. After a struggle against you to keep the door open, he won the fight, walking into the apartment with a nonchalance about the situation that you envied.
Looking at your selfies isn't the same as seeing you in person, though.
Even if you leaned away from his kiss, he was not deterred at all, his lips landing on your cheek softly. His words dripped in smoothness, and despite your irritation toward the fact that he didn't listen to the rules about social distancing, you couldn't help but ease into his easygoing rhythm. With Shinsou, you forgot about your worries about getting sick from the pandemic that was happening outside. You heard a come out of his bag and noticed Sushi Jr. peeking out shyly, making you crack a smile.
You knew that I was going to be mad, so you brought Sushi Jr. as a defense?
To be fair, you love Sushi Jr. too much,
he said with a shrug.
More than you,
you retorted as you coaxed Sushi Jr. into your arms. He advanced towards you, raising an eyebrow at you with a hidden threat lingering in his eyes.
Care to say that again?
Your banter echoed through the apartment as he chased you down the hallway and you ran away with Sushi Jr. buried in your arms. The kitten pawed at your chest while you were at it, mewling softly and making you melt inwardly. That one pause in your step while admiring Sushi Jr. allowed Shinsou to steal the kitten and place her on the ground. His hands immediately go to your sides, his fingers knowing exactly where to go. But you didn't mind the ache in your chest, forgetting your anxiety about getting sick, because you were with him. And that was what mattered. At least you thought someone's knocking on the door, but when you looked out the window you almost had a heart attack, because he hovered by your window with a self-satisfied smile on his face, holding a plastic bag containing a red bucket of fried chicken. Fried chicken was a delicacy in this insane period of isolation that you haven't had the chance to eat, especially with everything going on. So to you, it was a miracle as to how Takami had been able to get a hold of it. He tapped on the window, his golden eyes sparkling with mirth. While you composed yourself, your fingers felt hot and clammy, but you knew that he wouldn't judge you for wearing pajamas like this.
Aren't you supposed to be at work?
You asked, your voice getting covered by the whistling wind outside. But he heard you anyway, as he climbed into your apartment. I got off patrol early, Takami said with a cheerful tone to his voice. The crime rate has severely dropped because of the quarantine, so I have a break this week.
Is it awful that I feel like this is the first time in months that I've gotten to spend time with you without anything occupying us?
You admitted to him when you settled down on the couch together. He wasn't wearing his hero costume, and he had shrugged off his leather jacket to reveal how his t-shirt clung onto his body.
I know that everyone is panicking about the quarantine and everything, but I'm just so happy that I can see you without anything pushing us apart.
A smile pushed the ends of his lips upwards as he listened to you ramble like this. He supported his head by leaning against the couch. All of his attention was on you, and his eyes were closed, as if he was trying to memorize the feeling of being here with you. There's nothing wrong with wanting to spend time with me, he teased, but you knew this conversation was a lot more serious than it let on. Dating Takami meant sacrificing date nights sometimes, and even getting stood up. You've had your fair share of heartbreaks with him, but at the same time, you would never give this man up because of your disappointment and neediness. No matter what the circumstances are, I'll take every opportunity to be with you. His words fell softly out of his mouth, so meaningfully but true, and your heartbeat momentarily sped up, unprepared to deal with the emotions that you felt towards him. It was comforting to know that he didn't mind the fact that the only reason why he'll be able to spend the rest of the week with you was because of people getting sick. Sure, the reason why everyone in Japan was quarantined was because of the rapid-fire amount of people succumbing to the spread of getting sick. But at the same time, you could spend some time with Takami.
You're thinking too much, Dove,
he said, a frown shaping his lips.
Don't feel guilty about the time we spend together.
After undoing the knot of the bag's handles, he snapped the lid off the container, and the heavenly aroma of fried chicken swept into your apartment. You looked at the golden folds of the fried chicken, and your mouth watered at the sight. Before you took a piece, he plucked one out to feed to you with a small smile.
Open up,
he said, and slowly but surely, your guilt of being able to spend time with him blissfully subsided as you let the piece of fried chicken slip between your lips. The first thing that came into your mind was that if at any point in time that mask manufacturers ever needed a model, Todoroki was the perfect model for it. Sure, your thought might be inappropriate, especially with a pandemic happening, but it snugly fit his face. As soon as he stepped into the apartment, he slipped it off, disposing of it in your trash can. You knew that he was most certainly not sick, since, with his father's occupation, it was beneficial to endeavor if Todoroki didn't get sick.
Your father actually got off your case?
You said incredulously, surveying his appearance up and down.
I thought he wouldn't let you out of the house.
So far in this quarantine period, Todoroki had been spamming you with memes and sweet nothings, bored out of his mind at home. The memes and sweet nothings had been welcomed for the first few days of quarantine, until the two of you realized that you couldn't see each other at all in person. With Todoroki, you knew he'd do anything to see you during this quarantine, but the last thing you expected was him sneaking out of his house just to see you.
He's on patrol today,
Todoroki told you, a smile in his voice. He took off his jacket, hanging it off the coat rack, and slipped into the pair of house slippers he wore whenever he came to visit.
Fuyumi's busy teaching lessons on Zoom, and Natsuo's busy studying on Zoom. With everyone occupied, it's not that hard to sneak out.
What happened to being a good boy?
You asked, a light tone lacing your words.
That Shouto never existed in the first place.
He deadpanned.
Imagine the headlines. Shouto Todoroki breaking the law just to see his lover.
You mused, waving your hands up in the air dramatically. A grin spread across his face as he gave in to your warmth, thawing it. It took Todoroki a moment to adjust from his father to you, and you didn't mind it, letting him take his time.
Wouldn't that be a scandal?
A terrible, terrible scandal.
Todoroki intoned dryly, but as he shook his head, the smile on his face betrayed his amusement toward the idea. You noticed something that he set onto your dining table with a thump, and immediately your eyes widened with enthusiasm.
You got ice cream? Goodness, I love you so much!
It sounds like you love the ice cream more than me.
He said with a laugh.
That's the true scandal here.
You caught me in the act.
You responded, sticking out your tongue. Your fingers curled under the lid, unable to lift the lid up, and you held the tub of ice cream up to his face, sticking out your lower lip in a pout.
Could you help me, please?
I don't know about that.
He contemplated teasingly, but he did it anyways, snapping it open by sending warmth to his fingers to ease it into opening. The two of you sat down at the couch as you scooped ice cream, feeding it into his mouth, and suddenly, your apartment felt a lot warmer with him around.
When I said I was lonely, you didn't have to come all the way here to my apartment.
You said, your voice sounding almost strangled with surprise. Sero snickered at your reaction, leaning against the door frame casually.
Why not? I wanted to keep you company.
Despite his loving words, you knew there was more to them than he let on. Your text messages were filled with witty banter and flirting, but even then, those messages couldn't express the fact that the two of you felt like you were about to go crazy from staying sheltered up in your homes with nothing to do. He knew how much you have yearned for him in the last few weeks of quarantine, and it was driving you insane that you couldn't see the rest of your classmates. You were confined to using video calls as a means of communication, but even then, it was just too much for your whole head to take. For him, it was even harder because he was the bigger social butterfly out of the two of you. Sero's not big on complaining because that was his nature. On the other hand, it was easy to tell that he was not satisfied with screen interaction.
Social distancing is bullshit, and we all know that,
he had said during a phone call.
Why not ban social media at this rate?
As you stared at each other with silence falling around you, there was an intensity that made this moment pop out like stars exploding. You had forgotten how his voice sounded in real life, not distorted by your phone's speaker or anything like that. Memorizing him at this moment, from the way his lips quirked up into a smile to the way he looked at you, it was like you were breathing fresh air into your lungs, relearning the definition of life as you met his gaze.
You should come in,
you said, realizing how awkward it was for him to stand outside like this waiting for you to invite him in. You ushered him in, and he followed you, contrasting you with his gracefulness.
Don't want you to catch a cold.
Don't worry, I'm wearing several layers,
he hummed, pinching the fabric of his top casually.
See?
Mind if I help you take off some?
You asked, arching an eyebrow playfully at him. He grinned, lips fitting onto yours perfectly.
I thought you would never ask.
Rather than seeing him, you saw a giant box before you, obscuring him from your view. But you knew it was him by the way he held the box in his arms so unsteadily. He was the only person in your life who would dare to do such a stupid thing and bring something this heavy from across the city. There were times when you questioned Kaminari's sanity, and this was one of those times where you wanted to hit the pause button and shake him by the shoulders. You didn't mind the company, but when it was during a quarantine period where he was risking his life to see you, you prioritized his safety and health over your selfish needs. Inwardly, you made a note to berate him for his carelessness.
Did you bring all of your belongings here or something?
You asked with a laugh, as you shoved your foot against the door to keep it open for him. He stumbled into your apartment, setting down the cardboard box with a heavy sigh of relief slipping from his lips. It was almost comical to see his body sag to the ground as soon as he put the box down, since he was supposed to be a hero. But here he was, defying the standards of being a hero. After closing it, you walked over to sit on your knees, bending over so both of your foreheads were touching.
No, I didn't,
he informed you, pushing you away and making you sit up. You were sitting in the same positions now and faced each other on the carpet in front of your television.
I brought something much more important.
In your anticipation, you watched him rip the tape off of the box, curious about the very thing that had made him go all the way to your apartment. There was a bit of grunting and all, and he finally wrestled it out of its package, revealing a...
You decided to risk your ass to bring your gaming console here?
You said incredulously, shooting him a dark look. He pouted, his eyes shining.
It's Animal Crossing though.
Okay, give me a moment until we start.
The first thing that hit you was the smell. It was incredibly intoxicating, and despite having eaten lunch already, your stomach leapt out of your whole body, grumbling for more. You were relieved that it didn't growl as it normally did, because you wouldn't know how to keep embarrassment flooding your whole body. Midoriya peeked from behind the containers, shooting you a grin.
I'm using my quirk, but I would appreciate it if you let me in,
he sang, making you crack a grin and let him enter your apartment.
That's an incredible amount of katsudon.
You breathed out, not sure how to react to the very fact that his mum had made all of this. He set the boxes of katsudon down on the dining table.
Tell your mum that it isn't necessary. I got food stocked up in the pantry.
What kind of food?
Midoriya asked you, scrutinizing you with his emerald-eyed gaze.
Will it be as good as this?
No.
You admitted sheepishly after a long pause.
But won't it mold eventually?
He averted his eyes immediately from you.
Well, it's better than the stuff that you're planning to eat.
You noted the other things that hung off his wrists in eco-friendly bags. The bags were bulging as if you were going through an apocalypse. With the bags being opaque, it was hard to get a sense of what exactly was there.
Is the rest of this from your mom?
You asked suspiciously, looking at the bags.
No,
he mumbled, his words slurring into one another in his panic.
There were some good discounts at the grocery store, so I bought some board games and other things if you ever get bored.
He met your eyes shyly, and your heart melted all over again for him, who had tried his best under the circumstances to make sure that you were as comfortable as possible for quarantine. All you had been doing was trading text messages along with staying up late with each other on the phone until the other fell asleep. But there was nothing quite like looking at him now with his constellation-freckled face and smile.
Thank you, Izuku.
You murmured under your breath, pressing your lips against his slowly. Just about when you were on the verge of deepening it, he broke free of it.
Aren't we supposed to be doing social distancing?
You came to my apartment.
You pointed out, matter-of-factly.
That's not social distancing at all.
Surprise didn't begin to explain your feelings towards Yaoyorozu's sudden appearance at your apartment. She looked completely at ease, which raised mental alarms for you. You spent a few good minutes checking Yaoyorozu's body temperature to make sure that she was not sick with the fever or anything before you sat down on the sofa.
I thought you said that social distancing was necessary to make sure both of us don't get sick.
You commented, sending her a curious look. The two of you have been keeping contact through text, not really having the time to call each other. Yaoyorozu had always been the type to follow rules, being your class president, so the decision she had made was almost unbelievable to you. A light pink fans across her face.
I changed my mind because I was concerned, and I made sure I was well protected from everything.
She held something similar to an N95 respirator, and you admired her for her intricate genius, noting it looked identical to the pictures you've seen. While texting, Yaoyorozu had mentioned that she had assisted in helping hospitals by producing masks, but there was a slight part of her that was almost disappointed at the fact that she was not able to produce enough to help out. Her concern was valid, but you knew her to the point where you knew that her mind was fixated on these mistakes. You changed tactics, leaning forward with a sly grin.
So you didn't miss me? Of course I missed you!
Yaoyorozu bursted out, and you grinned. She sunk into the couch, realizing that you've tricked her into admitting her real intentions.
Oh, I swear, one of these days you're going to be the death of me. Love you too,
you replied instantly, earning a quiet laugh from her.
Oh.
Mission accomplished.
I thought you didn't want to risk the heavy fines if you get caught on the streets.
You asked her with a sly grin on your face as she entered your apartment.
My mum and dad were encouraging me to break the rules,
she answered with mirth dancing in her voice, cocking her head to the side.
They said, what's the point of you being enrolled in a heroics course if you aren't able to put those skills to use? Oh, of course they said that,
you said with a snort. You knew that Jiro's parents were completely enthusiastic about you dating her, completely supportive of your relationship together. Most heroics department students didn't date simply because of the amount of commitment it took in a relationship. With Jiro's cynical nature, most would peg her as the least likely of your class to date, besides Mineta. But surprisingly, the two of you were attached at the hip. On the other hand, the quarantine had taken its toll on you as a couple since you couldn't see each other in person. She snuck a look at your desktop, the ends of her lips tugging into a smile.
You're listening to ASMR again? Oh, that one.
Your voice wandered off as soon as you caught a glimpse of the title of the video, and immediately your fingers found their way to Ctrl+W. Not interested in letting Jiro figure out what your tastes ranged in.
It's nothing special.
Unfortunately for you, her eyes quickly landed on the title of the video. ASMR Cuddling with Your Girlfriend. The title read blandly. With Jiro, she was known for her speedy reaction time, since her quirk required her to respond to situations quickly. 2. So it was no wonder that she was able to catch the title of the video. Your earbuds were still plugged into the computer, and the remnants of the video's sound played out before dying.
Her voice sounds nothing like mine,
she observed aloud, much to your chagrin. She raised her eyebrows at you with a knowing look in her eyes.
If you want real cuddling, just ask me, or I could do a recording for you. I know that quarantine is hard on you, so don't suffer through this without saying a word.
The flush on your face and stammering that came out of your lips were enough for her to laugh and tease you.
I was in the area helping out one of my neighbors buy groceries, so I thought I would stop by.
Uraraka sang cheerfully upon coming into your apartment.
I got you some good coupons too, since I thought you might like them.
You looked down at the small strips of paper that were spread in a fan with large discounts. It was amazing how much you saved when you go out to buy groceries and other necessities. You were used to Uraraka's good luck in finding the best sales and discounts in your favorite brands and everything. But you've forgotten how considerate she could be, especially when she was worried. In her dark eyes, concern bubbled up in them, and she hid it with a large smile. For her, she had a lot to lose with the pandemic happening. Even if her parents owned a construction company, they were not exactly in the place to call themselves well off or anything like that. And they couldn't file anything with their insurance since they were employers themselves. Construction had already been paused throughout Japan, leaving little to none business to profit them. As you watched her turn to leave your apartment just as quickly as she came, you suddenly realized that she didn't only come for you, but she also needed someone to be with, a constant in her life. You poked her cheek softly, giving her a gentle look.
Want to stay for some mochi?
Her eyes lit up at the sound of her favorite food, and she pecked your lips briefly, a noticeable change in her behavior.
I would like that,
she said, making you smile in response to the idea of spending time with her.
Surprise!
He said, but you paid no attention to his words, rushing to his arms. Kirishima embraced you immediately, and it felt like the first time you kissed, so warm and comfortable. It was easy to lose yourself within this hug, because you had almost forgotten what it was like to touch someone else. Being with him was so comfortable, surrounded by this bubble of bliss and happiness. Your vision blurred out everything around you whenever you were with him. He planted his lips on your forehead, giving you a wry smile.
Long time no see, huh?
That's an understatement,
you mumbled, rolling your eyes at his optimistic behavior.
I thought that you were only allowed to go out for your work study, though.
It's called breaking the rules.
He admitted with a small chuckle and a stage whisper.
I wanted to see you so badly. This quarantine's going to be the end of me if I don't.
Sinking into another kiss, you couldn't complain because you were enjoying this just as much as he did, and your fingers climbed through his hair, begging for more. There was so much you wanted to do and say, but the time wasn't exactly forgiving to you, so you settled with this. Him murmuring your names in hurried breaths, like this was going to be the last time you ever saw each other. You said his name back, letting it become your mantra during these precious moments.